My hobby is repairing old or damaged game systems. This activity allows me to earn a few dollars. I have a substantial collection and I am happy that they are all functional. However, they are quite fragile. For example, my TV controllers are very sensitive, so I prefer to play on emulators of old games. My brother has a stepson that he is going to adopt. I decided to give him a nice gift, a refurbished PlayStation 5 for his birthday this year. I spent a lot of time cleaning and stress testing the console to make sure it was in good working order. I think I did a great job. I like the idea of being an uncle. Recently, my brother along with his wife and kids came to visit. We played Mario Kart on my Nintendo Switch console and I was winning, but my older brother claimed that I only beat him because of the newness of the system. He claimed he could beat me on the Nintendo 64. I accepted the challenge. I have a translucent orange N64 console that is my pride. I pulled it off the shelf, found the right cartridge, and defeated my brother again. My nephew wanted to try playing it. I cautioned him that the system was old and delicate. While not trying particularly hard to play well and not using shortcuts, I did encourage the kid. He was so upset about losing that he grabbed the console and slammed it against the table. The console didn't shatter, but it stopped working and there was a crack in the case. I got angry and asked everyone to leave the game room. I told my brother that I would charge him to repair the console, regardless of the cost. He countered that the console was old and not worth much, claiming he could buy a replacement on eBay for $30. I replied to my brother that I agreed, but the console had to be the same color. He started looking and found a similar one for $250. He stated that this price was exorbitant for an old console and refused to buy it. I was upset, but just said, "Fine." So I sold the £5 and used the proceeds to refurbish my old console. It's not perfect, but it works without a hitch. I gave my nephew a $50 gift certificate to Nintendo for his birthday. I discussed the gift with my brother beforehand to make sure he and his wife would be happy with it. That way, he was expecting a £5 and not my nephew. My nephew thanked me for the gift certificate and apologized for his behavior when he broke the N64. My brother was annoyed because he had already bought some £5 games as a gift for the kid. Now, he would have to look for another console since I only had mine left. My brother called me irresponsible for selling the gifted £5. I replied that he should be responsible for his children's actions. Our parents think we are both being petty. Your parents are wrong. I wouldn't give your nephew anything at all. I'm glad your nephew thanked you and apologized, but keep him away from your stuff until he learns to respond better to defeat. It's not you who is being inappropriate here, it's your brother. He's a bad influence on his stepson. It's not nothing. I think the brother was looking forward to the £5 more than the nephew. He was more upset about not being able to play his games than he was about having to return the ones he had purchased for his nephew. The brother's reaction was horrible. If your child accidentally breaks something, that's one thing. But if he just breaks an object, that's another story. Your brother needs to realize that the kid didn't get a £5 from his uncle because he's clearly not responsible enough for such a gift. It seems like someone bought themselves a lot of games and is now unhappy that they can't play them. Smashing a console because of anger is completely unacceptable. Your brother and his wife need to take responsibility for their kid's behavior. I am also a huge fan of Mario Kart 64. I know those vintage consoles don't come cheap. Next story. My wife is 36 years old and I am 35 years old. We have been married for over 5 years. She realized last year that she is bisexual and shared this with me, and then earlier this year with our friends and families. In March, I started a new job. My wife asked if I would be willing to let my new coworkers know about her. I replied that I would think about it and see what the atmosphere was like in the office. I feel like this is a personal matter, and I realized that discussing it might be inappropriate or even scare someone. We discussed the issue again this evening. The conversation was tense when I admitted that I hadn't told anyone at work yet. I explained that it wasn't related to my job and there wasn't a good time to bring it up naturally. My wife asked if I was ashamed of her. I replied that I wasn't because I really was. She expressed doubt, thinking I didn't really believe she was bi. I said I was sorry she felt that way because of course I believe her. I have no reason to doubt. She told me that she had already shared this with her boss and coworkers. I expressed joy for her, considering she has known them for years. This is quite different from me, as I hadn't even been on the job for 4 weeks. We continued the discussion for over an hour until finally they called a break. She went to bed and I went for a walk. Not because I'm embarrassed or I think she's vying for attention. It's just that, in my opinion, it's everyone's personal business. My immediate supervisor, as well as 2 senior staff members on my team, are all women. I am concerned that they might interpret what I say the wrong way if I tell them about my wife's bisexuality. I don't want them to think I'm bringing up any strange or inappropriate topics. My wife assures me it's funny, but I know that if a woman I barely know suddenly told me about her husband's bisexuality, I would think she was trying to plan something. I love my wife and support her, but her bisexuality has nothing to do with my work. Honestly, in conversations about work, there was never a good time to include this topic organically. I explained to my wife that I put up a rainbow flag badge during Pride Month, but she only rolled her eyes. She thinks I should do more. I feel awkward. You're not an idiot. Her orientation has nothing to do with your new job. It's unclear why she thinks anyone at work should know that. It just seems weird. I try to imagine a situation at work where it would be appropriate to mention your wife's orientation. For example, after congratulating her on a successful project, "Thanks, boss. I couldn't have done it without my wife's support." It sounds natural, but your wife's orientation is a personal, not a professional matter. Supporting her doesn't require discussing her orientation at work. Privacy and professionalism are more important than public appearances. She's always there for you, and she thinks everyone should know it, especially your coworkers. She may be trying too hard to compensate for this. She realized her orientation later in life and may be feeling insecure about her new identity. She needs to strengthen herself in it, not overcompensate. Maybe she should get involved in activism or take you to a pride parade to get it noticed in other ways. Now I want to tell a different story. Sometimes I do something that annoys my wife. At such times, she prefers not to discuss the problem with me, but ignores me for days. If her anger reaches a peak, she may lock me outside our bedroom. After the situation is resolved, she often says that what happened was not my fault or that it wasn't that bad. For example, when one of her coffee cups broke, she didn't ask me what happened, she just started ignoring me. Turns out the cup was broken by her friend's child. I try to ignore situations like this, and while I love my wife and don't plan on leaving her, I don't see the point in making jokes about her. Recently, when I came home, she locked me in the bedroom again. She didn't respond to my knocks, texts, and calls. I eventually decided to spend the weekend with friends playing golf at a resort where we had plenty of fresh beer, golf, and a comfy bed waiting for us. I ignored all of her texts and calls throughout the weekend and left her a voicemail to keep her calm. When I returned, she came out of the bedroom ready for an argument. She asked me how I could leave town without consulting her. I retorted by asking her if she had planned to ignore me all weekend and make me sleep in the guest room. She explained that it was my punishment for forgetting to take out the trash on time, and now the garage would smell for a week because of my carelessness. I laughed and took her to a calendar, offering to point out the day I allegedly failed to take out the trash. She looked at the calendar but never pointed to a specific day because it was actually her turn. She recognized that this was no reason for me to waste money on the weekend. I asked her why I had to sleep in the guest room and not with her, especially when the mistake was on her part. She admitted that she had made a mistake and that I should have pointed it out instead of leaving. I ended the conversation by asking how I knew why she was upset if she refused to talk to me. I left, but before I did, I told her that if in the future I did something so wrong that she wanted to sleep alone, she should clearly explain exactly what I did and why it upset her so much if she decided to block me again. I suggested that I spend the next few days with my friends. She accused me of being controlling and that I was punishing her for the misunderstanding. I agreed that she had misunderstood who was supposed to do the task. She was also mistaken about my intention to sleep in a comfortable bed. She was deeply mistaken in thinking that I would accept such a situation again. She was angry, but not angry enough to lock me up again. You're not an idiot, but you married someone who is acting rather immature. Your wife seems overly petty. Honestly, if I were you, I'd wonder if it's possible for me to live with someone who acts like this all the time. She still hasn't learned to respond appropriately to the disappointments or mistakes of others. I would seriously consider before having children with her, unless she herself feels that therapy would help her better cope with her own problems. Imagine how she might apply the same punishment techniques to future children. Scenario: Hi, Daddy. Mommy isn't talking to me today. What did you do? You shouldn't have kids with her for their own good. If this is the first time she's punished you, you should have already thought about the future of that relationship. Hell, you seem too naive to continue a relationship with such an immature, petulant person. She pathologically won't admit fault, which means you're in for dozens of similar incidents for the rest of your life. Scenarios of yelling and accusations that it's your fault for not pointing out her mistakes. When she realizes that she can no longer control you and make you grovel, start acting like a victim in front of friends and family, claiming that she is upset by your actions. You will never feel happy and respected again unless you find the strength to discuss this with her. She doesn't have to act like this. My next story. I am a 52-year-old male, married to my spouse for over a year. She is 41 years old and has 3 children, a daughter 18 years old and 2 teenage boys. I have 2 grown sons. My story is quite extensive. I have been able to be friends with her sons, but my daughter cannot tolerate me, despite my best efforts to develop a friendly or at least warm relationship with her. She has continually rejected my efforts. A few months ago, I talked to her privately and asked her the reasons for her dislike. She said she thought I was awful and too old for her mom and just didn't like me. I replied that she was entitled to her opinion, but reminded her that we both love the same woman, albeit in different ways, and it was worth trying to work things out. She responded by clearly stating that she did not want to communicate with me. I said that was fine and that she would always be welcome in our home, but that I would no longer try to get close to her. I also expressed my hope that she would stop making mean comments and being rude to me in her home. We agreed to leave each other alone and be polite if we had to communicate. She agreed. She has a graduation party in a couple months. My wife is planning to organize a party in June. When she talked about her plans, I told her I wasn't going to the ceremony and was going to play golf the day of the party. My wife thinks I'm being petulant and childish, but I don't think so. I am trying to honor my stepdaughter's agreement, and I assume she doesn't want me at her celebration because she has a negative attitude toward me. Her graduation is supposed to be about her, and I don't want to be a distraction. I think my action is reasonable, although I realize I may have made a mistake by not attending my stepdaughter's graduation. You are being respectful of your stepdaughter's boundaries and personal space. In the event that your wife is upset about your absence, it is wise to discuss the matter in advance. This way, she can socialize with her stepdaughter and get her opinion of your presence at the prom. Despite all the difficulties, you remain respectful of previous arrangements. It is important to maintain civility, although it is unfortunate to have these conversations. Your stepdaughter's mother could have prevented uncomfortable conversations. At her young age, you can't necessarily expect her to see you as a friend or to harbor sympathy for you. However, requesting a show of basic courtesy is reasonable. Your wife may misinterpret your desire for a relationship. She may be seeking marital happiness, but the problem lies in her daughter's dislike of you. Enjoy the game of golf. Keep in mind that stopping rudeness early on can be difficult. A teenager is under no obligation to be polite if she doesn't feel the urge to do so. She has every right to feel resentment. Family conversations can be difficult. Direct dialogue with her is recommended. Some teens, especially those who have faced emotional trauma, may be abusive, thus testing the limits of your patience and love. A story that really surprised me. I have always been very attached to my mom, so her loss was a huge tragedy for me. The week before the funeral, I spent time with my family. We picked out flowers, looked at old photos, and suggested that the children draw pictures for an exhibition at the ceremony. It was nice to be around loved ones. It helped me cope with my grief. The ceremony itself took place on Saturday and lasted from morning until noon, after which we gathered around the dinner table. Originally, my best friend was supposed to watch my kids, but she came down with the flu on Friday, so I asked a relative to take over the task. One of my husband's brothers ended up watching the kids, allowing the rest of the relatives to attend the funeral. My husband and I arrived at the service at 9 a.m. Friends and family came to pay their last respects. By 11 o'clock, my husband's relatives still hadn't shown up, but by the end of the ceremony, my father-in-law and mother-in-law had arrived. After the service, we went to pick up the children to go to lunch together, which was a fun and warm atmosphere. However, my husband's in-laws never showed up, although my husband tried to contact them. I later learned that they chose not to go to the memorial dinner, but invited my husband's brother and his fiancée to attend as a token of appreciation for their help with the children. This really offended me. My husband's parents, his adult brothers, and their companions did not attend the service or the luncheon. I shared my feelings with my husband, and he agreed with me that we needed a break from his family. So we did, spending Easter away from them. It's been 2 weeks since I've spoken to them. My mother-in-law wrote to my husband apologizing to him, but not to me. Don't turn your grief into anger. Memorial dinners are most often held so that close friends and family of the deceased can share memories and stories. You may want to take a step back before engaging in the deeper therapies that are necessary for healing. I am sorry for your loss, but you should not expect everyone to attend the funeral. They were at the funeral and you are still upset. It saddens me. I am very sorry for the loss of your mother. I have attended many funeral ceremonies for my parents and parents of friends. Often I was not close to those who had passed away, but I still came to support the living. Family, relatives, and coworkers come to support those who are grieving. Your husband probably should have discussed with relatives about their expectations and what he expects from them. Some people just don't know how to behave at a funeral. Every person experiences loss differently. You have every right to your feelings. It is important to realize that everyone deals with their pain in their own way.